Camden. It has been a while since the planning board has met. They did do a review for the Coastal Mountain Land Trust a few months ago for their new building that they're building on Mount Batty Street. So that was some action that the board did take in the last few months. Prior to that, we haven't met. I think the last time we met was probably April. So we do need to get on some things. And I'll just start with the agenda, and do I have it? There it is. We will not do, maybe, Katie, you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Everyone being, and this is Peter Burke.
Hi, Peter Burke. Nice to meet you.
Yep.
My name is Katie Brad, and I've lived in Camden now for about 18 months. My husband and I moved here with our 3 kids. I have 2 in high school and 1 at the elementary school. I have therapy practice in town. My office is upstairs from Dorrigo Law, so that's right down here. And I just, my family has a history of, civic service and, serving on select boards. And that's why I've been around that kind of for a long time. And just decided once we moved here, I love this place so much, I want to do what I can to give back to our community.
Awesome.
That's great.
Tia?
I'm Tia Anderson. I served on the Zoning Board of Appeals and now have joined the Planning Board. I've lived in Camden 30 plus years, just over the 30 mark. And I am, obviously interested in community and housing and all things related. So this is sort of a good fit for me.
Perfect. Thank you. And we'll just keep going. I'll roll with it. There's no public here other than Peter Burke. He's sitting in. There's no non-agenda items for public comment. We were going to try to do election of chair and vice chair at the last meeting. Again, I think I mentioned earlier, they nominated Pat Chen to be chair. She was not in attendance, not really fair. So I'd like to try to do that at the next meeting. Mark Murray is normally with us. He couldn't make it today. He's been on the board along with Lucia and Pat for 5 years maybe or so. Mark is normally here. And Lucia is here, perfect. So we do have a quorum. Lucia is joining on Zoom, I believe from Colorado or wherever she's at. All right, I'm just going to jump into the legislature has been doing a lot to try to address housing. And there's Pat. Hi, Pat. How are you? Good, good. I was just getting started, Pat, saying what we're up to.
Okay, yeah. We can't see you. We can hear you though.
Press your button. Oh, no, it's green. It makes it pop.
There's Lucia.
There she is.
Thanks, Lucia. Do you hear us? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I was just going through.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay.
Yep. I was just going through the agenda, and Pat, I don't know, you weren't at the last meeting, but they had appointed you as chair, and I know.
I don't want to.
Oh, good. That's what I suggested that earlier.
Yeah, no. 'cause,
Yeah, all good.
I travel.
All good.
Yeah.
Totally get it. So we'll do that elections at the next time. And I'm maybe looking at a future chair in the video screen. Lucia.
I see.
That's my suggestion to the board. However, we can talk about that at another time. So we won't do elections of chair and vice chair today. Again, I was just touching base on the legislature's been doing a lot on housing over the last many years. They did LD 2003, which I brought to the voters 2 years ago now. It seems like, probably 2 years ago, we did a whole lot of changes in our code. And actually the year before that, we did a bunch of changes. I was seeing with the legislature where they were going, and I didn't know they were going to create mandates for us, but they did. So I beat them to the punch and changed density and allowed accessory dwelling units everywhere. And we did a lot. And then the legislature did LD 2003, which made us do more because we had to use our base density, what was in our code, and we had to add to that. We had just changed it. So we had just ramped up density, and then they said, you got to ramp it up more. And we're like, oh, we just did, and they didn't care. So we did send a bunch of changes to the voters. Voters overwhelmingly approved them, and then the legislature keeps going. And there's 1829, which is a whole host. I'll get that to later. But one thing that they LD, where was I? Sorry. LD 427. This is an act to regulate municipal parking space minimums. What they are mandating municipalities to do is in a growth area, you cannot require more than one parking space per dwelling unit. Our zoning code currently requires 2 spaces per dwelling unit. And these are minimums. It doesn't make someone, these are minimum requirements, right? Someone could do more parking if they felt they needed more parking, they could certainly do that. So what I've proposed, and I've drafted very simple changes to the code, would be to require only a minimum of 1 parking space per dwelling unit, not just applying in growth areas, but that would apply across every zone in town. And for those that don't know, Katie, I don't know if you know, but like the town, we have a host of different zones, and uses are allowed based on the zone, and there are different standards like development standards, setbacks, frontage, all those kinds of things, lot sizes for each zone. And we did a number of years ago, also got rid of the downtown parking requirement for uses in the downtown, to not require new developers, new builders to build parking downtown. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to do that. So what I have drafted is just as an amendment to our existing code that would just go from 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit to 1 space per dwelling unit. And it would, again, not be just in the growth area. This would be across the board in every zone we have. I don't think that's I don't think it's a big issue. And then there is the other one is LD 65, and this requires municipalities to amend the definition of a coastal wetland. And when we're talking coastal wetland, the ocean is, think of the ocean as a large wetland, and that's what a coastal wetland is. It's that edge. And so currently, the way the code reads, it talks about the highest annual tide that's published by the National Ocean Service. There is no longer a National Ocean Service. But what the legislature is doing, and it makes great sense, is they have required towns to now use, it's the highest annual tide is being replaced with the highest astronomical tide as determined by NOAA. And that actually is a much better standard for starting where the shoreland zone starts. And for those people that don't know, I mean, the shoreland zone is from prior, it was the highest annual tide up 250 feet. That's where the shoreland zone is. And there are standards within that zone, setbacks, lot coverages, and things. And this is to protect water quality, but also to protect aesthetics and a whole host of things. So we're going to go, and we're mandated to do it. We're going to just use the highest astronomical tide level, and that will add some more protection. And I haven't looked at the maps yet on what that actually does to individual people's lots, but there is no issue. I mean, we can't not do this. We have to do this. This is mandated. So I have drafted language to do that. Getting back to the parking really quick, I'll go back there. I have drafted it for you. It's right from our code. Red strike throughs are what is deleted. Blue, bold, and underlined is what is proposed. So on that dwelling unit, this is 290.10A.5B1A, just changes that 2 to 1. But there is also a requirement that, oh, and I also changing multifamily because we need to. But our current code says that you can use off-site parking if it's located within 1,000 feet of the principal use, measured along lines of public roads. What I have proposed to change that to, because the statute requires it to be 0.25 miles from the development site. And I just, rather than doing it measured along public roads, I figured it would be just better, just measured as a crow flies is how we would measure it. I don't think it matters. So that's what that does. And then the coastal wetland definition changes. Again, the red strike through, this is in the definition section, strike through the whole definition and create it and change it to the blue. And that matches up with state law. We will need to hold a public hearing for that. And my suggestion, and the reason so people that don't know, like Katie, you haven't been with us before. In order to get things to voters in June, we have to go through a process. We hold a public workshop on this, and that's what kind of this one is for these two. These are very simple, and we hold a public workshop, and then we have to schedule a public hearing with the planning board. Planning board holds a public hearing. Sometimes we get comments, sometimes we don't. We hold a public hearing. Voters, the planning board says, "Yep, we want to move these forward. We want to move these forward to the voters in June." You make a vote, and then what that does is it sends it to the select board with a recommendation to send those to voters in June. Then the select board then will they generally don't hold a workshop, but they'll hold a public hearing on it. And then if it gets through the select board, and then they'll schedule it to be on the warrant in June. The reason we're starting now, June seems like far off, but it's not. We have to have everything pretty much done, lined up, finished with the select board by mid-April or early April. That's in order to get ballots done and everything else for June. So we meet generally the first and third Thursdays. And so we're in November. And then, I mean, if you just add it up, we're like 6 or 8 meetings away from the end are possible to get things to voters. So easy ones, I'd like to just get them out of the way, schedule them, and just send them to the select board. I would say that the select board has decided they're going to change their formats of their meetings. As I understand, they're going to have the first meeting of the month. They meet the first and third Tuesdays. The first meeting of the month is going to be a business meeting. That's when they conduct business and like hold hearings and approve licenses and things like that they do. The third, their next meeting in the month is going to be a workshop. They're going to workshop things, which as a staff person that has to take things to the board, I think it's a great idea. Like the short-term rentals thing that we did and all these things. We've done piers. We've done a lot of pretty heavy lifts. People on the board will remember that. We spend a lot of time on it, digging deep into it, and then we present it to the select board. They don't, sometimes if they're not paying attention or following along with what's been happening, then all of a sudden there's a hearing right in front of them. So this way, these workshops will give them an opportunity. I'll share all this stuff with them ahead of time so that they're not surprised by a hearing or what action the planning board's taking. If that makes sense to you all. So I would like to schedule, that is something we do need to do tonight. And with no chair, maybe can we, I don't know, Lucia, you're one for Robert's rules more than I think anyone here, maybe, or maybe Tia is, but do you want to, just for purposes of Robert's rules, and maybe act as chair to schedule, take a vote to schedule a public hearing on these two amendments to the code? And I would suggest that we should do the third meeting so that Shenley and I and Maddie have time to get things into the newspaper, that we shoot for December 18th for a public hearing on those, if that makes sense to everyone.
So a December 18th meeting or planning board meeting?
Yeah, a public hearing for both of those two changes, yeah.
Yes, so you want me to make that recommendation?
Sure, how about make a motion?
Make motion, okay, I make a motion that that we have a planning board hearing on these two items that we've heard today for December 18th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we
And
got
what time would that be? At 5 o'clock?
5
again?
o'clock again, and it will be on Zoom too.
Oh, it's on Zoom.
Well, it'll be Zoom and here in person, so you can do either one.
Okay.
I will be back by then.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second. Oh,
All in favor?
all in favor. It looks like all in favor, unanimous. Perfect. Thank you. Then we'll do that. That'll be easy, and we'll make sure you guys have plenty of information and all laid out very easily for you to follow along for that. And I think I told to a couple people that this was going to be a quick meeting. I think it will be. The next thing, I want to just touch on 1829. This is a big bill. When I talked about 18 or LD 2003 earlier, 1829 is even bigger. It does a lot more. 1829, these are new zoning and land use reforms from the state to promote additional housing development. Again, as a planner that's been in this field for a long time, and I've been working with MMA and other planning groups, I don't believe zoning is the problem for housing, and the legislature keeps going down this road. It is becoming cumbersome and challenging for municipalities to keep up. It's challenging for developers to keep up and know what they have to design to or plan to when seems like every session, in even the short sessions, they're carrying over housing bills. So LD 1829 for towns like Camden, which have a town meeting form of government and not a city council, we have until July 1st, 2027 to adopt and implement 1829. So there has been some talk in the community that like my circles, whether or not 1829 is actually constitutional. I'm not going to go there. What my plan will be is to start picking away at some of the pieces of 1829 that make sense for the town of Camden. And we can talk about these when we can get into detail, but some of them don't make sense. Go ahead. It's an LD that the legislature passed, a law that was signed into the governor. It does a whole heck of a lot, like similar to LD 2003, which made you create affordable housing. We created an affordable housing overlay zone that addressed affordable housing density increases that the legislature wanted, which makes perfect sense. In LD 1829 says anywhere you have a single family home, you must allow, if you're on sewer, 4 units, no matter what. There is no single family zoning anymore. There is none of that. So there's a lot to it, and they're shrinking. Town can't, in your growth area, require more than 50 feet of road frontage or lot width per lot. That can be really challenging, especially on certain roads. Like our growth area, our downtown village zone is not our growth area. Our village extension is our growth area. That goes out Washington Street. That goes out 52, out to Molyneux Road. That's like village extension. Well, with speed limit of 50 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour, and if you have 50-foot wide lots and you have a driveway every 50 feet, that becomes like a traffic management and access management challenge. It can be. So there's a lot that I think the legislature doesn't look at and appreciate when they're trying to do these. I think they're trying to do good things, but I think they should let planners and towns try to manage some of this ourselves. So I'm going to try to pick away some of the 1829 stuff that seems to make real sense for us and let that other stuff languish out there until it's been litigated or it's been determined it's not constitutional or whatever. And we'll just play that out, how it plays out.
Thank you, Jeremy, for doing that. I just want to just say thank you. It's very appreciated that you're doing that, because some of this does not make sense.
Thank you, Lucia. I appreciate that. It is a fight and a challenge, unfortunately, but I think I do have at least one legislator's ear that I think is has some sway on some of this stuff in Augusta. So we'll see how that goes. What else? Oh, and they're in the process of, they did do some changes to state subdivision law, and now they're going after subdivision again to remove requirements, to actually ramp up. So right now, a subdivision is if I'm going to divide a lot or create 3 or more units in a 5-year period, that's a subdivision, needs to go through subdivision approval on the municipal level. They're changing that. They're going to ramp it up, I think, to 5 lots. We'll see how this plays out. That's something that we need to keep a handle on. I mean, I think they forget the approval criteria. Communities need to be able to plan for orderly growth in their community based on the comp plan that they've approved. And that's what the comp plan does. And the comp plan in Camden was done just in 2017. We have until 2029 before we have to redo our comp plan. So, your comp plan is supposed to guide your regulations. And it's all supposed to be based on your comp plan. So I think some of these bills actually go against what communities have in their comp plans. And that is a challenge to see how that's going to play out. What else? Nordhaven. It's the subdivision that is being built up on the other side of Springbrook Hill. The planning board approved that. I think it was 9 units with including the house that was there, 10 units, I believe. They have not submitted for us an expansion yet for that subdivision, but they have submitted a state DEP stormwater permit application to expand that subdivision by 15 more houses, buildings up in there. So that is something that the board will be seeing at some point. I'm not sure when that will be coming, but I just want to keep you in the loop on that because we did get notice and we have a copy of their stormwater plan here in the office if people are interested. I would suggest that the planning board stay away from the plan until it's in front of you and not come in to look at it yet.
Okay.
It's not for your review yet. So, but I will say there.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Jeremy, I'm sorry. Can I ask a quick question regarding Nordhaven? Do you know how many you've been constructed and sold?
I believe there's 1 or 2 left to be built. I believe, Lucia. And all of them that have been built have been sold, is my understanding.
Okay.
And I think 2 have actually been sold twice.
Wow.
Purchased, and then sold again. So yeah, and so the project, as I quick look at that site, the proposed expansion goes off to the north as you're going up. So you go in the main drive, it would the drive would continue off to the right-hand side as you go up the drive, not towards the back, towards the base of the slope coming down from Camden Hill State Park. And I'll just leave it at that. Another thing I wanted to touch base was about our setbacks. This is in the village zone, and we're looking at setbacks. Shenley and I, and this is Shenley for those that don't know Shenley, Katie Shenley, and that's Peter Burke. Shenley helps me out a ton. She's a town planner, but we review our zoning code. I mean, this is like what we do all day. We're in this document, and we are constantly hearing from property owners and builders and realtors about everything under the sun you can imagine. And the only thing that we have to go with is our zoning code. And we have some really odd things in our code. We didn't make them. It was people in years past did. And maybe they made sense at some point. Maybe they didn't, but they still were voted in by the townspeople, and which is fine. But we have, like in the village, this weird wonky side yard setback that is like a thorn in our side and people's side, that says The side yard, and this is the side, everyone can assume it a side. If you've got a front along the street and the rear along the back, you've got two sides, right? That would generally run parallel. The side yard setback is 10 feet. So that's each side yard is 10 feet. Provided, however, the sum of both sides is at least 25 feet. So I can't really have, the side yard isn't 10 feet. One's 10 and one's 15, right? Or some other thing. Any structure that has an existing non-conforming side setback shall have a setback requirement of 15 on each side. It makes our heads spin, and it makes people say, like, what on earth? What does this mean? Like, what are you trying to do here? So I think we're thinking of just going to something simple like 10 feet. A lot of urban communities, like I say urban, like I'm talking urban, their village zone, would have a setback of 5 feet, is a common setback. That would generally give, if people build right up to the line in the urban village zone, 10 feet between the buildings. That's 5 on each side, right? I generally think 10 is probably more appropriate. It allows people to be able to access their rear lot with a truck or a mini excavator or something without having to go onto a neighbor's property. I think 10 is a good one. I think, there are code requirements, how many feet you need to be from another building, based on what type of view or what's going on in that building, or if you've got a certain type of boiler or propane tanks, there are setbacks and a whole host of things that need to look at. So I think 10 is a fair and appropriate set. It sounds like they wanted it to be 10, except when, they really want 25. Some.
That's just for the structure, like you said, what about tanks and sheds that are sort of portable, driveways?
Yeah.
fences?
No, it only applies to structures, and the structures are things it applies to buildings, and buildings are things with roofs and a foundation of some sort. So even a shed would be 10 feet. I will say that there may be room for us to think about, and so a rear setback is 15 feet in the village zone. There may be room for like 15 is your rear setback, but for small accessory structures like a shed, that you could put that up to 5 if it's small, like maybe 200 square feet or less, so 10 by 20 or less, you could put it up to 5 feet from the rear line. What I found in my prior worked in Bangor, we had in our developing area, we had a requirement of the rear setback was 20 feet in the developing zone. Well, you put your house out front, in the front of the lot, you want a shed out back, right? Well, it had a 20-foot setback. And then the lot behind you also had a 20-foot setback. So you ended up putting the sheds in the middle of someone's yard rather than in the rear where people really wanted to be able to use their yard. So we changed it. And so we gave people that opportunity for smaller structures, got down to 5. And I think that might be something that is worthwhile looking at. Or we can just do, the 10, what we have.
The other thing is,
Peter, do you want a microphone?
no,
You-
not yet.
Come on. All right.
I'll talk about it. But the other question would be is, what about things attached to the structure, like heat pumps? And
Yeah.
what does a 3 propane tanks look like up against somebody's
Yeah.
house?
Yeah.
With a 5 foot, 10-foot setback.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, and that's why I think a 10-foot setback is appropriate, not going something smaller than that, because there are standards, and we don't get into the placing of propane tanks. We don't permit propane tanks. We don't do that. That's the propane company has to comply with the rules that they have to deal with. And so the 10-foot gives them ample room already to do that and place those. So I think that makes sense. That's something I want to work on. Go ahead, Lucia.
I'm sorry, are we going to be discussing this later as well?
Oh, yeah.
Or is this
I don't
something
have
that you were
anything-
just working on?
I don't have anything proposed for this. This is just something would like to get to sooner than later.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, oh, yeah, frontage. Did I talk about frontage? I was going to on the agenda. Frontage. Our definition of frontage is really, really wonky. Another thing that's wonky and it is causing us problems. Frontage or lot width is generally the width of the minimum width of your lot fronting along the street or a right of way. We have a variety of different standards depending on what the zone is, 75 feet or 100 feet, as an example. There are very creative attorneys out there that have done some really wonky things. There's one on Harbor Road recently. A lot was created that it's in the village zone on Harbor Road, 75-foot wide minimum lot width requirement, had plenty of lot width to create two standard. There's a house already there with a large lot. He wanted to split it into two and could have done it very easily and given everyone 75 feet of frontage, like a normal, right? What runs the width of the property. Instead, what we got was a lot that has 75 feet. Well, I think that there's a piece of it that extends to the rear of the lot, which is 30 feet. And then he carried 45 feet along the right of way, 2 feet deep. So you have a lot that is 2 feet deep from the right of way, and he's calling that 75 feet of frontage in order to get this wonky rear lot out back. And we had to go with it, and it makes absolutely no sense. There's a whole host of things wrong with it. So it met the definition, unfortunately. And I even pointed it out to him, and he's like, well, I'll come and testify that you guys need to change this because this is screwy. I said, you know what? You didn't have to do it. But he did it. So that's something I'd like to change. And then there's situations where we have this other kind of wonky way. If you read this definition, and I won't go through it, it's in the code, but it says the linear distance between the sidelines of a lot measured along the lot line that borders upon whatever right-of-way serves legal access to the lot. For purposes of this chapter, the following way shall constitute legal access to a lot along which frontage shall be measured. A way accepted or established and belonging to the town of Camden or state of Maine, right? That makes sense. That's a town road or state road. You can get frontage. A way, whether dedicated to public ownership or not, as shown on an approved subdivision plan. Makes perfect sense again, right? This is a private road that gets approved by the planning board. This is the road. This is your frontage. This is the challenging one. A private or public way which has not been approved by a governmental subdivision, but which has been established in a deed recorded in a registry of deeds or otherwise legally established by adverse possession or adverse use. So I can just create a way on my property and deed it to you with there's no review, there's no standards, there's no nothing to it, unless it's greater than 500 feet long that way, and then it triggers planning board approval, and there are some standards. That's really wonky, and it's created some really kind of bizarre access and lot configurations. So what I think we're going to try to propose is something that would allow flag lots, which is, you have a large lot in front, they might have a big lot and they create a lot out front, and then they keep like a flag pole, for instance, of like, say, 50 feet wide. It goes back no more than 200 feet, and then it can open up and pick up the rest of the frontage, and that makes a perfect sense. That's what a lot of towns do, and it works. What we have doesn't work, and it's created some really odd scenarios in town. So I'd like to try to clean that up. That's one thing. Another thing that we're tackling and having an issue with is street level. Street level, and this is not on the agenda, but I'll just tell you about it. Street level is only used for the purposes in the downtown B1 zone. Street level is defined a certain way. Well, it's a certain way. It's really crazy. You read through the definition of street level and you're like, what does this mean? And the whole idea was to prevent residential uses on the street level in the downtown. Right? You don't want at French and Braun to turn into an apartment, right? You don't, maybe you do, maybe someone would live there, but for a from a community's perspective, from a downtown viability and livability and like what we expect our downtowns to be, we want them to be vibrant places of opportunity and business and retail and whatever, commercial. So that's where street level is. And there's this wonky way of defining what street level. And as you can imagine, there are certain scenarios that you're like, what's street level here? You know, like what is street level? The old Paul Gibbons law office across the street here, that's now a hotel, micro hotel. What's street level there? You walk in, it's a split level ranch. There's a platform when you walk in that door, then you go up a rise of stairs and you go downstairs to the basement level. What's street level? There's a way to define that in our code. We define that one. Now it's pretty easy. But then you get into some other scenarios, like I'm going to say one that we're dealing with right now, 48 Washington Street, which is used to be Brimstone Consulting up beyond the mill. What's street level there? And you read the definition and you're like, yeah, none of these really work. And it makes sense to call that street level. It looks like a house, it wants to be a house. It probably was a house years ago. Used to have a front door, I'm sure. It doesn't have a front door anymore. It doesn't open to the street. It's set back off the street. You can't turn that into a house. Well, not right now because it's street level on the first floor. And that prohibits business, or it prohibits residential. So we're looking at street level, and we'll be bringing something to you on that. And again, Shenley and I, been doing this for a long time, and we try to find as many resources as we can, look at examples, see what other communities are doing for things like this, and we try to find the best practices that are out there for things like this. We have an exemption currently, street level in the B1. If you're in the Chestnut Street Historic District, right? There's an exemption for that kind of thing, which makes sense. That allows historic buildings to be adaptively reused without a whole lot of restrictive uses to them. What else? Okay. The Historic Preservation or Historic Resources Committee has been advocating for a historic preservation ordinance in town. They took something to the voters, last November, I think it was, last November. And it was just a kind of to gauge the interest of the public, should the Historic Resources Committee pursue a historic preservation ordinance in town. And this would apply to the historic districts that the town has, and these are federal historic districts. There is no protection. I will say, people think because something is in a national historic district or is a national landmark, there's some sort of protection on those buildings. There is no protection on those buildings unless there's a federal undertaking. That means there's federal dollars involved. So right now, a number of years ago, the Historic Resource Committee, they've been working on this for a long time and just been stewing over this. They did a demo delay, wanted a demolition delay ordinance, and voters approved that a number of years ago. We drafted that. If they move forward with the historic preservation ordinance, we would then come back and pull out that demolition delay ordinance out of our zoning code completely, and it would just fall under a historic preservation ordinance. I've been following them along on this. Shenley's been helping them too, somewhat. I had encouraged them early to send notices out, hold public meetings, send notices to everyone that falls in these historic districts to make sure they're following, know what's happening, because This would, like, if you wanted to change windows out, if you wanted to change the type of siding you have on your house or the roof, you'd have to go to them. They didn't do that initially. And then they did. And so they've held a handful of meetings with the public. I think the last meeting I watched, it sounds like they're pulling back a little bit. They're going to try to, rather than shoot for June, I think they're going to shoot for next November just to gauge more public input. I think they've scaled some things back on what they were proposing. Rockland recently adopted a historic preservation ordinance in Rockland, but it is 100% like, you have to go to this Historic Preservation Commission, but it is just technical assistance. It's just, this is, if it was us, this is what we would do. And that's how they're approaching it there. They're not mandating things. I used to be the historic preservation officer in Bangor and ran the CL, it's a certified local government historic preservation ordinance up there. And we met all the time. And anytime anyone wanted to put a fence or change the siding or windows out, you had to go to the commission. So I think what Rockland did is maybe a way to get things going a little bit, and maybe Camden folks are going to look at what they're doing there. I don't know, but I just want to keep you in the loop on that, because historic preservation is part of community development, it's part of planning, and I think it's important stuff. But they're going to be the lead on that. Another thing, so I mentioned shoreline zoning earlier from the coastal wetland perspective. The Conservation Commission, which the town has been meeting with me on and off over the last few years about ways to try to protect town resources, natural resources a little more. So we have shoreline zoning. I mentioned that earlier about coastal wetlands. Shoreline zoning also regulates 200 things that happen within 250 feet of normal high water of the Maguntacook River, Maguntacook Lake, Hosmer Pond, Goose River, which is the outlet of Hosmer Pond. There's a 75-foot wide stream protection zone. And then and then Lily Pond has parcels that are in Camden, have shoreline zoning there. And then there's Springbrook. I always struggle with that one. Is it Springbrook Brook or is it Springbrook? I don't know what it is. But you look on a map and it says one word, Springbrook. So I always Springbrook Brook. That meets. So Springbrook is a stream that has a certain watershed area that drains to it. And it's a defined, the state has mandatory minimum shoreline zoning standards that we have to meet those standards. So we have all of our water bodies that are shoreline zone show up on a shoreline zone map, and there's some protections there. There are other streams and resources that do not qualify as shoreline zone streams because their watershed drainage area is too small to meet the state's standard. Now, you can go be more strict and regulate things that the state says you don't have to. The Conservation Commission, and I think rightfully so, is looking at what ways can we do to protect water quality and wildlife corridors and habitat in areas near and adjacent to these streams that don't have a lot of protection. They don't have protection locally. There is something called the Natural Resources Protection Act. That's the Maine Department of Environmental Protection regulates. That is anything from high water of a stream as defined, and a stream as defined by their perspective is, and I may not get it all right, it changes from time to time, but it's like has to have defined banks, it has to be devoid of upland vegetation, it has to have mineral bottom, has to have aquatic insects, those kinds of things. And that's what DP or myself can come out and tell someone if that's a stream regulated by the Natural Resources Protection Act. Now, they only regulate things that are within 75 feet, but there's no real vegetation removal standards. You can get a building down to 25 feet set back from those streams. And these are big streams and small streams. There are these streams we have in town, like Rock Brook drains down into, I think we call it Davis Brook when it enters into the harbor underneath Atlantic Avenue. Very large watershed, drains off the mountain, but it's not as big as of a watershed drainage area than Spring Brook, but a very big one. Another one would be out Tamarack Trail. There's a large, very large, nice brook that runs down into the Meguntacook over there that doesn't have any protection really. And then there's the one that out, if you go out Barnestown Road, this drains into Hosmer Pond. If you go out, as you're going out Barnestown Road heading into Hope, it's really beautiful spot. The stream is running down along the right side as you're heading out. Very large drainage area again, but it doesn't meet the criteria to be a shoreland zone stream in Camden. And then we have another sensitive, I think pretty sensitive watershed stream area, which is that which drains below Cobb Hill. And it drains down, enters in to Meguntacook River below Cobb Hill Road and like Rawson Avenue area. Starts up at Thomas. That's a pretty sensitive watershed area. It's got a lot of, I would say urban development for a different word, but you got Lupin Terrace up in there. You got Cobb Hill, and then you've got, it's just a sensitive stream. It's being impacted by a lot of development. You can see it on the banks. The banks are eroded massively. And if you're thinking about water quality, eroded soil as a pollutant, it's an illicit discharge under state of Maine law if you have eroded soil getting into a water body. But we have significant erosion issues along that stream. And anything we can do, and I think this is the concept where the Conservation Commission is coming from, to protect water quality, and again, wildlife corridors and habitat, we should do something. So I think we're going to look at, and that's what the Conservation Commission, we're meeting with them next Tuesday, to see what we can do on the zoning side to protect those streams. And we're not talking like a 250-foot shoreland zone from those streams. I think we'll be looking at something like 50 feet from high water. And it's not like a no build necessarily zone, but it might be like vegetation removal is regulated similar to what is regulated currently for the streams that are shoreland zone streams, if that makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense to do that. I think people in Camden really value the environment, value water quality. Hosmer Pond is a sensitive, I think it shows up on the state's priority watershed list as sensitive or impaired, or maybe not impaired, but sensitive or threatened. I even think Meguntacook Lake shows up on that list too. Meguntacook Lake's, I think, in a little different scenario than Hosmer Pond. But as you may recall from when the mountain fell into the Hosmer Pond one during the redevelopment, I hate to bring that up again, but that dumped a lot of sediment, a nutrient load into the Hosmer Pond, and I think there was an algal bloom in and about that time after that. Water quality, if you look at China Lake, 3 Mile Pond, Weber Pond over in Kennebec County, you can see that when water quality degrades, property values plummet, the people's desire to use the resource, to live on that resource changes significantly. And I don't think any of us want that in Camden. So I think what we can do to protect water quality goes a long way for everyone. So we're going to look at that with the Conservation Commission, and that's something that I'm hoping we can get to voters in June. That's really all I have. And this is kind of, we haven't met in a while. There hasn't been a lot of development activity. We've been doing a lot of permitting and a lot of buildings going on in Camden, but on the planning board side, we haven't done a lot of projects. So I just wanted to regroup again, talk about these projects or these things that we're working on, and try and schedule this public hearing so we can get these little ones done. If anyone has any questions, shoot. Otherwise, I think we're good for the night. But go ahead, Lucia. Pat, let me ask Lucia a really quick one.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Lucia.
Oh, yeah. So just a quick question, and not to add to anybody's schedule, not to add more, but just for the sake of the planning board, the new planning board, if you will, is it possible, or I'd like to suggest that we have a workshop fairly soon to, just because we have new board members and just to get a sense of, maybe some folks have some thoughts about things that we can do or discuss, further things that, staff might be concerned about or bringing up further on the way, as far as not just zoning, but the,
Yeah.
the comp plan
Sure.
is concerned. Just, just a general workshop where we can discuss some of those things, just for the planning board
Sure.
and staff, of course.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Would you like to do it? I mean, we have the public hearing scheduled for December 18th. That will take likely 15 minutes for both of those, I think. Do you want to do it at that evening? Or what are you thinking, Lucia?
Sure. I mean, it depends on everybody's schedule. Sure, if that's if we're all ready to get together, that would be great. If that works for everybody's schedule. If not, it can just be a Zoom, like some of the work
Sure.
groups or workshops that we've had for,
Sure.
For the rentals.
Yeah.
In the new year, I'm just suggesting before this next year goes too far.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have a
I think that's a
meeting.
great idea. And maybe what I can do is I can send out Shenley and I will send out an email to you all in the next few days, probably early next week. And we could send you a link to the comp plan for people that haven't seen it or gone through it, so that they can go through that and see what the comp plan is all about. And then maybe tease you all with some questions or some to get what you guys are looking for, and some things that maybe you want us to be looking at and doing. Because I think it's important for the planning board to be engaged and active and not just responding, just doing reviews, right? Or just responding to if Shenley and I think we need a zoning amendment, bring it to you, and that's what you guys do. I mean, I would like you guys to be active and participatory and leading some of these discussions. And I think with a new board, I think that's will be a great way to get going and get people's perspective on things and planning and community development in town and what we're looking at. I know Lucia in the past has talked about impact fees or user fees, and those are things that I agree with you. We should look at some of those things, I will say. And so, these kinds of things, I would love to talk about in a way that is workshoppable, if that's a word. And, I think we need to impact fees. The state is trying to really put a clamp down on what towns can do for impact fees. So I think we should look at user fees and call them something different when appropriate. And so those are, that's a good idea to have a time where we can just really just workshop and talk about things that where the community is, where it's going, where we want it to go, and things that the board can be engaged in and active in trying to move planning and land use forward in town. That sounds good to me. We want to do that on the 18th, we can, and if we want to schedule them, and it might be just we can just have a brief, just a talk about, the comp plan and what it says, and are we implementing what the comp plan says? Because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You come up with this comp plan, you're supposed to implement it. I will say we have been implementing some of it, so that's good. But there are other things that we should probably get a handle on and start implementing. There are things that we should probably tweak in the comp plan. I'll just bring it up.
Jeremy,
Yes.
just,
Is that Chriso?
it is.
Hi, Chriso.
There is already discussion of updating when we are putting together the new edition of the comp plan. So I wouldn't go too far down amending the current one when we're building up towards an updated version for 28 or 29, whenever that deadline is.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. We can talk about that maybe offline a little bit.
Yeah.
And then circle back. I will say there may be things, and I mentioned this earlier to someone before the meeting started, but all these new bills, the housing bills that the legislature have been passing, they're forcing them in areas called growth areas in your community. And those growth areas are defined in your comp plan. We have defined the village extension as our comp plan. There are now towns that are actually going into their comp plan, amending their comp plans, and shrinking their growth zones almost to nothing because the legislature did what they did and it made no sense for their community. And even some of the communities like Westbrook, for instance, has zero municipal capacity in their sanitary sewer system. And so they have shrunk their growth zone down to nothing in order to in order to kind of like push back on this idea that we need, you've got to be able to develop four dwelling units on every single lot in Westbrook. They're like, we can't do it. We don't have the capacity for it. So that's where I think looking at your comp plan to do updates might be appropriate. I'm not saying in this case doing that, but I think it might be make a lot of sense to start looking at ways we can amend or change, tweak our existing comp plan before we go through a wholesale change. Like we don't even really speak of climate change in our comp plan at all, really. And we should. There should be a section on climate change and sea level rise in our comp plan. So we may have ways to tweak some things, Chriso, before we do a wholesale, new comp plan, if you will. I know Pat had a question. Did you remember?
Yeah, is there going to be a meeting on,
December 5th?
yeah,
I'm thinking not right now.
okay, that's all it was.
Yeah, I'm thinking not. That's just like 2 weeks away,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
And I'm not ready for one.
Okay.
I don't think we're ready for one. So I think we'll shoot for the 18th.
Okay,
And then, but before that, we'll send out the comp plan, make sure you all have it. We'll send you out maps. We'll send you out, the zoning maps so everyone can see. And please feel free to read them. If you have questions, just reach out to me or Shenley, and we'll get you answers to your questions and your thoughts. This is, it's not overly complicated, but it's something Shenley and I do all the time. Zoning and land use and planning, but lay people sometimes they may not fully understand why we do things the way we do or why things are set up the way we do. I will say you look at our zoning code and we scratch our head every day and we say, wow, who did that? Why did they do that? And you can always find something in our code that says, there are weird little things like you can't use this building for this use except if that building was in existence as of 1990 and was on Elm Street and was on a lot that was on the corner of this street and that street. And it's like, those are the things like I'd like to clean up. Those were certainly done for specific people for a specific project. And that's not the way to do good planning. Let people, I want to give people opportunity to do things. It's interesting. Shenley and I both went to the American Association of Planners conference. The New England chapter had a conference down in Portland a couple weeks ago. It was fantastic. There were like 450 planners from around northern New England showed up and had some great sessions. I don't know where I was going with this, but I forget. Oh no, not public input. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But there's so much out there and so many communities are doing the same, like we're all in this, we're all in this thing, right? We're trying to plan for our community, like long-term success, long-term, what the community is desiring the community to be. And we learn things all the time. And we hope to impart some of this stuff on you folks too. And you can help be a part of making Camden, I think, what everyone wants Camden to be, and why we're here, and why I work here, and why you guys live here. I would live here if I could. I can't buy one of those $1 million homes up on Nordhaven. That's all I have. Does anyone have any other questions? I figured it was going to be kind of quick tonight, but I think this is good to start. It's been a while. Mark Murray will be in attendance next time, I'm sure. Peter Burke, who's here today, he's going to hopefully, hopefully the select board will appoint Peter next week or 2 weeks so that he can join us on the 18th. I still think we would then still need a member or two, right? One. So if people know of other people that would like to join the board, please get them in touch with me. That would be great. Other than that, I mean, I think we have a great staff that can support you, and we're here for you. That's all I have to say, I think, for today. Normally, I'm not like this. I'm normally, it was Ethan Shaw in the past, and Chris O was his vice chair. They led the meetings, and I participated. Shelley participated as needed, but with no real chair right now and just starting, I felt like it was probably the best way to handle this meeting. So maybe think about for next meeting on December 18th, think about elections for chair and vice chair. And the vice chair just sits in for the chair when the chair is not here. And we will also do our best to make sure you all understand Robert's Rules of Order. We try to go along with them, but we're very transparent. We keep minutes. We have the record from the videos are always out there. Shenley will and Maddie will kind of create some minutes from today's meeting. Those minutes are generally pretty minimal because we have this video recording too. So we just try to touch on the main points in our minutes. So if you do see minutes in the future, I'm wondering why they're not like this long word by word thing of what each person said. That's not the purpose of minutes. The purpose of minutes is to understand what the action was taken and why. And people can go find the nitty gritty of the meeting and the decision in the video itself. So that's how we approach minutes these days. Anything else? I appreciate you all. Thanks for volunteering to do this. And I mean, I envision as we move forward, I think the busiest time will probably be February, March, when we're trying to get things really to voters and figure out what those will be. And I think it's Shenley and I to probably, and the Conservation Commission if they're going to move forward with that. They're taking the lead on that. They approached me on that, trying to ramp up protections. So we'll let them take the lead, but we'll tweak the code as needed to help support that. And you will be the one that they don't have any say in what the code says, but they'll just provide some comments on it. And Shenley and I will help them we'll draft it based on what they're looking for and be as appropriate as we can. That's all I got. With that, I guess we can close the meeting. And thank you all. We'll see you on the 18th. Shenley and I will get notice in the paper as needed, and we'll get everything to you guys in the early next week for you to start noodling over this stuff in your head.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you need a motion?
Sure. So moved.
I move that we close the meeting.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Lucia.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I'm thinking of Robert.